Have you ever heard of a warrior who started with nothing and ended up conquering an entire region, only to be largely forgotten by history? Today, we're diving deep into the incredible and often controversial story of Bakhtiy Khalji, a man whose ambition redrew the map of India. Our story begins in what is now southern Afghanistan. Ikhtiyar al-Din Muhammad ibn Bakhtiy Khalji, quite a mouthful I know, was born into the Khalai tribe. He wasn't royalty. He wasn't born with a silver spoon. In fact, early descriptions paint him as rather unremarkable, even ill-favored with long arms and a plain appearance. Seeking fortune like many young men of his time, he traveled to the court of the Ghurid Sultan, Muhammad of Ghor, in Ghazni. But he was rejected. Can you imagine? The man who would later conquer Bengal was turned away. Undeterred, Bakhtiyar headed to Delhi, under the command of Qutb al-Din Aibak, another one of the Sultan's generals. But again, he was offered a low-ranking position, which his pride wouldn't allow him to accept. Frustrated but not defeated, he journeyed further east to Badaun, and finally found a commander who recognized his potential. He was granted a small fiefdom, a couple of villages on the border of modern-day Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. This was his chance. This small piece of land was the launchpad for an empire. Bakhtiyar was a born leader and a brilliant opportunist. From his small base, he began conducting raids into the neighboring territories of Bihar. These weren't just simple smash-and-grab operations. They were calculated moves to test defenses, gather wealth, and build a reputation. Soon, freelance Muslim soldiers, adventurers, and fellow Khalai tribesmen flocked to his banner, drawn by the promise of glory and plunder. His small band of raiders quickly grew into a formidable private army. He was no longer just a minor chieftain. He was a power to be reckoned with. His most famous and controversial early campaign was the sack of Odanapuri in Bihar around the year 1200. Odanapuri was a major center of Buddhist learning, a grand vihara, or monastery, filled with monks and priceless manuscripts. The historical accounts, particularly from the Persian chronicler Minhaj al-Siraj Juzjani, describe a brutal assault. The fortress-like monastery was stormed, and it's said that the entire population of saffron-robed monks was put to the sword. Minhaj writes that when the conquerors wanted to find someone to explain the contents of the library, not a single person could be found alive. The library, filled with centuries of knowledge, was torched. This event is often cited as a devastating blow to Buddhism in India, from which it never fully recovered in the region. It cemented Bakhtiyar's reputation as a ruthless and effective commander, but it also casts a dark shadow over his legacy. News of his successes traveled fast. Qutb al-Din Aibak, the same man who had once offered him a lowly post, now saw his value. He honored Bakhtiyar, showering him with gifts and formally recognizing his conquests. With this official backing, Bakhtiyar set his sights on a much bigger prize, the rich and fertile kingdom of Bengal, ruled by the elderly Sena king, Lakshmana Sena. Now this is where the story becomes legendary. According to the chronicles, Bakhtiyar's conquest of Bengal was something straight out of a movie. He knew a frontal assault on the capital, Nabadwip, would be costly. So he devised a brilliant plan based on deception and speed. He marched his army towards Bengal, but left the main body hidden in the jungle. He then pushed ahead with just 18 horsemen, disguised as horse traders. Imagine the scene. 18 men, dusty from the road, ride calmly into the capital city. No one bats an eye. They look like simple merchants. They ride directly to the gates of the king's palace. And then, all at once, they draw their swords and launch a surprise attack. The palace guards are thrown into utter chaos. The noise and confusion create the impression of a much larger attacking force. King Lakshmana Sena was reportedly sitting down for his midday meal when the commotion erupted. Panic spread like wildfire. Thinking the entire city had fallen and the main army was upon him, the old king fled out the back door barefoot and escaped by boat down the river. With the king gone, the city's defenses collapsed. By the time Bakhtiyar's main army arrived, the capital was practically his for the taking. Just 18 men had effectively decapitated the Sena kingdom. It's an almost unbelievable tale of audacity and psychological warfare. After capturing Nabadwip, Bakhtiyar established a new capital at Lucknow, also known as Gaur. He didn't just conquer. He governed. He divided the territory among his emirs, established law and order, built mosques, madrasas, and Kanka Sufi lodges to promote Islam in the region. He even minted coins in his own name, a clear declaration of his authority. In just a few short years, a man who started with nothing had become the master of Bihar and Bengal, ruling a vast new territory in the name of the Gurd Sultanate. He had laid the foundations of Muslim rule in eastern India that would last for centuries. But for a man like Bakhtiy Khalji, ambition is a fire that is never quenched. Conquering Bengal wasn't enough. He looked north, towards the mysterious and wealthy lands of Tibet and Turkestan. His ultimate dream was to control the lucrative trade routes that passed through the Himalayas. This would be his final and fatal campaign. In around 1206, he assembled a massive army, said to be 10,000 strong, and marched north. He ventured into the treacherous terrain of what is now Assam, guided by a local tribal chief named Ali Mek. At first, the campaign went well. They crossed a great stone bridge over a river and pushed deep into the mountains. But this was unfamiliar territory. The landscape was harsh, the mountain passes were easily defended, and the local kingdoms were prepared. The Tibetan expedition turned into a complete disaster. The army was ambushed, their supply lines were cut, and they were forced into a desperate retreat. The great stone bridge they had crossed was destroyed by the enemy, trapping them. Facing starvation and constant attack, Bakhtiyar's army was annihilated. Out of 10,000 men, it's said that only about 100, including Bakhtiyar himself, managed to struggle back to Bengal. The defeat was catastrophic, not just for the army, but for Bakhtiyar's spirit. He returned a broken man, physically ill and consumed by shame and grief. He locked himself away, refusing to see anyone. The once invincible conqueror couldn't bear the public humiliation. His lieutenants, who had once followed him with unwavering loyalty, now saw weakness. The end came swiftly and tragically. While he lay sick and despairing in his bed, one of his own emirs, a man named Ali Mardin Khalji, crept into his room. Seeing his commander helpless, Ali Mardin pulled back the sheet covering Bakhtiar and stabbed him to death. The great warrior, the conqueror of Bengal, who had risen from obscurity to build an empire, was murdered in his bed by one of his own men. So what is the legacy of Bakhtiy Khalji? It's complicated. To some, he is a villain, a destroyer of universities and a symbol of brutal conquest. To others, he's as a brilliant military strategist and a visionary state builder who brought a new administration and culture to eastern India. He was undeniably ruthless, but he was also a product of his time, an era of relentless ambition and brutal warfare. His story is a powerful reminder that history is rarely black and white. He was a man of immense ambition and talent who rose from nothing, achieved the impossible, and then overreached, leading to his own tragic downfall. A forgotten warrior perhaps, but one whose actions fundamentally shaped the course of Indian history. His name may not be as famous as Alexander or Genghis Khan, but his impact on the subcontinent is undeniable. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next historical deep dive. See you in the next video.